Do you remember being a teenager? That feeling, everything changing inside and out, sometimes whether you wanted it to or not.
Oh, yeah, the confusion, the fear,
Yeah.
the relationships were so intense, right? Messy.
Totally. Now, imagine all of that, but you also add in, well, actual literal monsters.
Right. High school drama plus body horror plus like supernatural angst. It's quite a mix.
It really is. And it can feel surprisingly real, even with, the fangs and claws.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today on the deep dive. We take source material this time. It's the core book for a really interesting tabletop role-playing game called Monsterhearts 2.
Mm-hmm.
And we pull out the key ideas. The goal is to get you informed quickly, maybe spark some aha moments, and perhaps help you find something relatable in this whole monstrous teenage experience.
Yeah, our mission today is basically to unpack Monsterhearts 2. We'll look at what the game actually is, how it plays, and maybe why stepping into the shoes of a teenage monster who's juggling dating, homework, and, I don't know, accidentally setting someone on fire.
Right.
Why that can be such a rich experience, whether you actually play it or you're just curious about its unique angle.
Okay, so let's break this down. First things first. What is Monsterhearts 2, like, at its core?
Fundamentally, Monsterhearts 2 is a tabletop role-playing game. It's squarely focused on the messy, dramatic lives of teenagers
Okay.
who just happen to also secretly be monsters.
Yeah.
You know, vampires, werewolves, witches, ghosts, that sort of thing.
But it's not just about having powers, right? The source book seems clear that the monster part is also metaphorical.
Exactly. It's literal like, yes, your vampire character might actually need to feed on people.
Okay.
But it's also explicitly an allegory. The monster stuff stands in for those really intense teenage feelings. Alienation, shame, queerness, maybe self-destructive impulses. It uses the supernatural to look at very real internal struggles and social dynamics.
And the game itself, the text says it's designed to be explicitly queer, pushing back against, like, standard storytelling norms.
It is, yeah. It actively challenges those traditional, often very heteronormative narratives you see everywhere. It's built to explore desire, identity, relationships, all outside those narrow conventional boxes.
So the basic setup is a kind of high school horror show.
Pretty much. Where the biggest threats, often they come from inside you or from the people you thought you could trust, not just, things hiding in the dark.
All right, premise clear, teenage monster drama. But how does the game actually play? Is it about fighting monsters, collecting loot?
Not really, no. Not in that traditional way.
Yeah.
Monsterhearts is fundamentally built as a conversation between the players. That's the main activity.
A conversation, so you just talk.
You talk, yeah. You describe what your character's thinking, what they're doing. You react to what other people say and do.
Yeah.
Everyone makes one main character defined by skin.
Skin?
Yeah, that's like their monster type or archetype.
Yep.
And one player is the master of ceremonies, the MC.
Okay.
The MC handles all these side characters, teachers, parents, rivals, crushes, you name it. They manage the setting, throw in twists.
And it's not players versus the MC, like trying to win?
No, the source is really clear on that. It's collaborative. You're all in the conversation together, building the story as you go. The MC has a different job, but they're there to stir up drama, not to, beat the players.
Okay. There's this phrase mentioned, a guiding philosophy. Keep the story feral. What does that actually mean when you're playing?
It means basically don't try to control everything. Resist that urge to plot out the whole story arc.
Right.
Instead, you react honestly. React to what other characters do, react to what the MC throws at you, and this is key, react to what the rules demand. You kind of embrace the messiness, the chaos.
So you play to find out what happens rather than trying to make a specific thing happen.
Exactly. Let the story surprise everyone, yourself included. Keep it wild, unpredictable, feral.
Okay, so if it's mostly conversation, where do the rules and the dice fit in?
They shape that conversation. They mediate it, sculpt it. They bring in chance, unexpected twists. They help keep it feral. When your character says or does something that fits a specific rules description, these are called moves, you trigger that rule. And the dice often decide how that move turns out. The book says, say what the rules demand.
So the rules aren't, like, getting in the way of the talk?
Not at all. They're participants. They interrupt, they steer the narrative in ways you didn't plan.
Got it. Okay, so for a player, what are the main mechanics we need to know about?
Well, the most common thing is triggering a move. These are just the rules for doing specific things in the story that have mechanical weight.
Like trying to flirt with someone or hitting them?
Precisely.
Hmm.
If your character does something in the conversation that matches a move's trigger, like you described them making eyes at someone, then the rule for that move, maybe turn someone on, kicks in.
And you have to describe the action first. You can't just say, I use the move.
Right. You say what your character does, and if it's a trigger, then you follow the move's instructions. And that's usually when you roll the dice.
Okay, the dice. How does that work?
You roll 2 regular 6-sided dice, 2d6, and you add one of your character's 4 main stats. Those are hot, cold, volatile, and dark.
Hot, cold, volatile, dark. What do those represent, roughly?
Hot is about charm, attraction, social maneuvering. Cold is about keeping your cool, detachment, control. Volatile is about impulse, reactivity, anger. And dark is about your connection to your monstrous side, secrets, the supernatural.
And the roll total tells you what happens.
Yeah. A total of 10 or more, that's usually a clean success. You get what you wanted.
Nice.
The 7 to 9, that's a mixed success. You might get what you want, but maybe there's a cost or a complication, or you only get part of it. Hard choices often come up here.
Okay.
And if you roll 6 or less, that's a miss. You don't succeed, and the MC gets to make a move of their own, usually something that complicates your character's life.
Yeah.
Unpleasant consequences.
Unpleasant teenage consequences.
Yeah.
Plus monsters. Sounds appropriately painful.
It often is. Basic moves everyone has include things like turn someone on, lash out physically, shut someone down, and then each skin, each monster type, has its own unique moves too.
So moves just kind of emerge from the conversation as you play.
That's the idea, yeah. Describe the action, see if it triggers the move, follow the rule. It keeps things flowing from the fiction.
Okay, moves make sense. Now, what about strings? The book talks about them being like emotional leverage.
Exactly. Strings are basically an abstract measure of the emotional power or influence you have over another specific character.
How do you get them?
You can get them from certain moves, like if you successfully turn someone on or shut someone down, or sometimes through specific skin abilities or just things that happen in the story.
Like a currency for relationship power.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
They reflect how power shifts in relationships. It's abstract, though. Just because someone gets a string on you doesn't mean your character has to act differently. But you should probably play how that feels, you know.
Right. And how do you actually use them?
You spend them using a move called pulling strings.
Mm-hmm.
When you cash in a string you have on someone, you get choices. You can tempt them to do something you want.
Tempt them.
Yeah, offer them a kind of deal. If they do what you want, they actually get an experience point, so there's an incentive. Or you can give them a condition. Or you can add +1 to a roll you make against them. Or add +1 to any harm you deal them. The source has this great example. Gerard, who's a witch, has a string on his girlfriend, Leyline. He spends it to tempt her to skip school and meet him down at the cove.
Yeah.
And to make it really hit home, he specifically brings up this memory they share, dyeing her hair blue. He's using that intimacy, that shared history, to try and manipulate her.
Wow. Yeah, that makes it really personal. It's not just abstract influence, it's weaponizing the relationship. Like that Buffy example they mentioned, a monster hitting you is one thing, but when they use something personal against you.
Exactly. Spending that string to add +1 to harm or to a roll, it makes it hurt more because it feels targeted, personal. It's leveraging that connection. And remember, the MC side characters can get strings on your characters too.
Ooh, okay. That could get nasty.
It definitely can.
All right, strings. Clear. What about conditions?
Conditions are about your social situation. They represent the labels, the gossip, the reputations, the things people think or say about your character that affect how you're treated.
Like being known as unreliable or stuck up or dangerous.
Exactly, those kinds of things. You might get a condition put on you if someone shuts you down or if someone pulls strings or just as a consequence from the MC.
And what do they do mechanically?
If you have a condition on someone else, you get a +1 bonus to your roll when you make a move against them.
Oh, okay.
But you have to explain how you're using that specific condition in that moment.
Yeah.
Like, how are you leveraging the fact that everyone thinks they're out of control to manipulate them right now? There's an example with Cassidy, a werewolf, and Vic, a side character. Cassidy tries to shut Vic down at a party. She rolls a 7-9, a mixed success. So Cassidy does give Vic the condition out of control.
Okay.
But because it was only 7-9, the MC has Vic retaliated, and Vic gives Cassidy the condition dead meat. Now, Cassidy has this reputation among Vic's friends that she's marked for payback.
So conditions linger. They don't just disappear after one use.
Right. They stick around. You can use a condition you have on someone multiple times. They only go away if the character takes real action in the story to change that perception, or if, the social situation changes and it just doesn't matter anymore. It shows how hard it can be to shake a bad rep.
This sounds like it could touch on some really harsh stuff. Labels, social cruelty.
It absolutely does, and that's intentional. Conditions can definitely involve hurtful language or opinions.
Yeah.
The source is really clear. These are character perceptions, reflecting real-world social nastiness, not the player's views.
Right.
And because the game goes there, it stresses how vital it is to talk about boundaries and consent before you play. Everyone needs to be on board.
Makes sense. You need tools to navigate that safely.
Definitely. We can talk more about those safety tools later, but they're crucial.
Okay. Let's move to physical danger. Harm and healing. How does getting hurt work?
Harm is straightforward physical damage. You track it on your character sheet. There are 4 levels.
4 levels.
Yeah. Level 1, harm is minor. Some people might gossip about black eye, sprained ankle. Level 2 is more serious, might need a doctor. Maybe cops get involved, broken arm, bad burn.
Okay.
Level 3, harm is severe, life-threatening, like getting hit by a car, major internal injuries. And if you take 4, harm total, your character dies.
Wow. Okay. Real stakes, even with monsters.
Absolutely. And some skin moves, or spinning a string like we talked about, can increase the harm dealt, making it feel even more significant because it's tied to that emotional conflict.
And healing. How do you recover?
Well, you automatically heal 1 harm between sessions just by, patching yourself up. Basic first aid.
Yeah.
But here's the really interesting part. You can heal an additional 1 harm if someone else is tending to your wounds. Delicately, intimately. The book even says, perhaps with erotic subtext.
Whoa. So intimacy is, like, mechanically tied to healing faster.
It is. It links physical recovery directly to your relationships. That Cassidy Gerard example comes up again here. Cassidy is tending Gerard's wounds after he got hurt.
Right.
He gets the automatic 1 point of healing. But because they're fighting, she hit on his girlfriend. Remember, he refuses that intimate, delicate care from her. He accepts the basic help, but pushes her away emotionally. So he doesn't get that extra healing, even though he needs it.
That's a really elegant way to weave the mechanics right into the messy relationship drama.
Yeah, it shows that healing isn't just physical. It's about vulnerability, trust, who you let close.
Very cool. Are there any other player moves that really stand out?
A couple are pretty evocative. Runaway uses your volatile stat. On that 7-9 result, you get away, but you have to choose a complication. Maybe you run straight into something worse, or you make a huge scene, or you drop something vital, like your phone. Always good drama fuel.
Oh, yeah. Losing your phone as a teenager. Nightmare fuel.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then there's Gaze into the Abyss, which uses your dark stat. This is for when you're, like, researching forbidden lore or tapping into your monstrous nature.
Okay.
On a 10+ stat, you get clear, maybe disturbing answers. On a 7-9, the answers are confusing, maybe alarming visions, but you still get what you were looking for. The source compares it to that classic moment in paranormal stories.
Ah, the late night internet search.
Exactly, where the character is looking up myths about vampires and suddenly realizes with horror, oh my God, it's real. That dawning, terrifying insight.
Got it. That moment of truth.
And one more thing, growing up moves. These are moves characters can gain over time. They're specifically designed to help break negative patterns, using stats for more positive interactions. Things like make others feel beautiful or call people on their shit.
So there's a path for growth, for characters to maybe become less monstrous or at least less self-destructive.
Yeah, the game provides tools to actively push against the darkness and try to build healthier dynamics, if that's what the player wants to explore.
Okay, that covers a lot for the players. What about the MC? Their role seems quite different from, say, a D&D dungeon master.
It really is. Like we said, the MC isn't playing against the players. They voice all the side characters, they frame scenes, introduce problems, and a key thing, the MC never rolls dice.
Never. How do their actions get decided then?
Through MC principles and MC reactions. The principles are like guidelines for maintaining the game's tone and focus.
Like what?
Things like embrace melodrama, really lean into those high emotions. Find the catch, always look for the hidden cost or downside, even in good things.
Keep things complicated. Yeah.
Exactly. And a really important one, ask provocative questions and build on the answers. The MC is constantly asking players questions to flesh out the world, the characters, the relationships, often specifically aiming to create tension.
Like the examples in the book. Why did Jenna miss school? What are those rumors about Miguel's family?
Precisely. You're building the setting with the players, but you're also deliberately seeding potential drama and conflict through those questions.
What other principles are key?
Be a fan of the main characters. Your job is to make their lives interesting and dramatic, not to crush them. And give side characters simple, divisive motivations. Makes them easier to play and guarantees they'll clash with the main characters in interesting ways.
Okay, principles make sense. What about MC reactions?
Reactions are the specific actions the MC takes when the players look to them to see what happens next. Often it's after a player fails a roll, rolls a 6 or less, or just when there's a dramatic opportunity or a threat appears.
So these are the MC's moves, but without dice.
Kind of, yeah. They fall into two types. Set it up, which creates future problems, or knock it down, which deals with immediate consequences, usually negative ones.
Give me some examples, sure.
Inflict harm. Pretty straightforward. Maybe a character gets hurt after failing to escape. Leap to the worst possible conclusion. A parent finds something suspicious and immediately assumes the absolute worst about their kid.
Ouch.
Yeah. Expose a dangerous secret to the wrong person. Maybe the police sergeant happens to see Jake turn into a werewolf. Or a really potent one. Trigger their darkest self.
Darkest self.
Yeah, pushing a character past their limits, forcing them into their ultimate, most monstrous state. Each skin has one.
These sound like the MC's main tools for escalating the drama and danger.
They absolutely are. They make sure the characters' lives stay messy and compelling.
We mentioned before that the MC side characters can get strings on the main characters. How does the MC use those?
So side characters gain strings, just like players might, through moments of vulnerability or leverage. The MC tracks them. When a side character spends a string on a main character, the MC has similar options to a player. Tempt them, give them a condition, add +1 to harm. But the MC gets a special fourth option only they can use when a side character spends a string. It's called ambush them with a reaction.
Ambush them.
Yeah. That string gives the side character the opening for the MC to hit that main character with one of their big MC reactions, seemingly out of nowhere, but directly linked to that relationship's leverage.
Wow. So a relationship with a side character can directly lead to a major plot twist or danger.
Exactly. It ties those big narrative shifts directly back to the personal connections and conflicts the characters have built. It's a really neat feedback loop.
Let's dive deeper into the skins now. You said they're more than just monster types. They're lenses for different teenage experiences.
Yeah, definitely. Each skin isn't just I'm a werewolf. It's a whole framework for exploring specific themes, often with unique mechanics, maybe its own little economy, besides just strings and conditions.
Okay, give us some examples, like the vampire. What's their deal thematically and mechanically?
The vampire, according to the source, is really about exploring consent, emotional control, maybe even entrapment. Their mechanics often reflect this.
How so?
Well, their unique sex move is really something. If someone tries to turn the vampire on, and the vampire denies them sex, the vampire actually gains a string on that person. Power through withholding.
Whoa.
But if the vampire does have sex with them, they lose all their strings on that person. Intimacy creates vulnerability maybe, or changes the dynamic. Plus they have classic moves like hypnotic and feeding.
That's intense. It really bakes the themes right into the rules. What about the werewolf?
The werewolf often explores themes of dominance, territoriality, maybe struggles with anger or controlling primal urges, often seen as an allegory for, like, controlling partners. Mechanically, they lean on the volatile stat a lot, and dealing harm. Their darkest self is all about craving power through violence and dominance. They get moves like heightened senses, spirit armor, things reflecting that raw animal power.
And the witch.
The witch taps into themes of vengeance, hidden power, maybe power derived from intimacy or secrets. They use something called sympathetic tokens.
The tokens.
Yeah, like significant personal items they could get from other people. These function a bit like strings, but they're tied to these objects. They cast hexes using these tokens, or sometimes just by meeting someone's eyes and chanting. Their darkest self involves uncontrollably hexing anyone who slights them. Messy magic.
Okay, what about the mortal? They're not actually supernatural.
Right. The mortal is fascinating. They explore vulnerability, sure, but also dependence and maybe the danger they represent to the monsters around them just by being human.
How does that work?
They have this true love move. A mortal always has exactly one character designated as their lover. If they fall for someone new, the old lover is out, and they gain a string on the new one immediately.
Huh. Built-in relationship drama.
Totally.
Yeah.
And their sex move is maybe the most provocative. When a mortal has sex with someone, it awakens something dark or sinister in the other character. It can even trigger the monster's darkest self.
Wow, so the mortal isn't just a victim, their vulnerability is almost infectious,
Right.
dangerous in its own way.
Exactly. They can be a catalyst for the monster's worst natures to come out. It really flips the script on who holds the power. And yeah, like you picked up, each skin has that specific darkest self, their ultimate monstrous state, and a unique trigger to escape it, pushing players to explore that core nature.
This game definitely seems to wade into some difficult territory. Shame, betrayal, social cruelty.
It really does. Monsterhearts doesn't shy away from the painful parts of being a teenager, and it uses the monster metaphors to amplify them.
So how do you handle that responsibly at the table? Make sure it doesn't become genuinely harmful for the players.
That's where safety and consent become paramount. The source book stresses this heavily. You need to have an open conversation before you even start playing. Talk about potential themes, content warnings, lines that shouldn't be crossed, and veils things you might fade to black on.
Lines and veils.
Yeah, lines are hard boundaries, things you just don't want in the game at all. Veils are things that can happen off screen, maybe intense violence or sex scenes. The characters do it, but you don't describe it in detail. It's about empowering players to set their boundaries. The book talks about good discomfort versus bad discomfort. Good discomfort is like the thrill of a horror movie you chose to watch. Bad discomfort is feeling genuinely unsafe, upset, or triggered in a way you didn't agree to. Everyone needs to know they can draw that line and that it might shift during play.
Are there specific tools mentioned to help with this?
Yes, the X card is a big one. It's just a simple tool, often a card with an X on it, that anyone can tap or point to at any time if the content is making them uncomfortable.
And what happens then?
The group just stops, edits out, or changes whatever triggered it, no questions asked. The person using it doesn't have to explain why. It's about immediate safety and boundary respect. Fading to black, like I mentioned, is another tool. And just taking breaks, stepping away if things get too intense.
Simple, but sounds really effective.
They are. They give players control over their experience. The source also specifically calls out really sensitive stuff like racism. It says, look, characters can be racist, because people are, but exploring that must be explicitly okayed by everyone at the table beforehand. You have to be incredibly careful and listen to ensure you're not causing real harm, especially to players affected by racism.
It sounds like the game really emphasizes this shared responsibility to yourself, to the other players, and even to the characters you're playing, giving them depth even when they're flawed.
Exactly. It's about creating a space where you can explore darkness, but do it with care and respect for the real people around the table.
Okay, so if someone's intrigued and wants to actually play this, how do they get started? What's the prep like?
First, the practical stuff. You need the core book, obviously. You want to print out the character sheet, the skins, and probably the basic move sheets, maybe MC resources, get some six-sided dice, pencils, the usual RPG gear. But the actual game setup is really collaborative and part of building the world. You start by establishing this setting together. The MC leads, asking those provocative questions about the town. What's it like? Who lives here? What are the local legends, the dark secrets? What makes this place ripe for monster drama?
Building the sandbox together?
Pretty much. Then you create the seating chart. Usually it's the homeroom class. The MC might draw a basic map of desks, and then together, everyone starts filling those desks with side characters.
Not the main characters.
Not yet. These are NPCs. And again, the MC asks pointed questions about them. Who's this kid Todd? Why don't people trust him? What's the deal with the seam? What happened last year that made him hate your character?
Ah, so you're creating immediate connections and potential conflicts right from the start.
Exactly. You build this dense web of relationships, rumors, grudges, and potential allies before the main characters even properly interact. It means the drama can kick off really quickly.
And then how does the first actual scene begin?
The MC frames it. Starting right there in that homeroom you just populated is a great option. Introduces everyone, lots of potential interactions, but the book also suggests other strong starts. Maybe someone important has disappeared, or everyone's planning a big, potentially disastrous party, or maybe two characters are clearly heading for a confrontation, a fight.
Yeah, those definitely sound like they'd get the ball rolling in a high school monster game.
For sure. The aim is just to throw the characters together and see what sparks fly, which relationships and plot threads the players gravitate towards.
So after covering all this, the unique mechanics like strings and conditions, the deep themes, the crucial safety aspects, the collaborative start, why should someone play Monsterhearts? What's the real draw?
I think ultimately, you play for the characters. The ones you create, the ones you meet,
Mm.
they're designed to be magnetic, compelling, but also deeply flawed. You play to see how they grapple with those core teenage anxieties, shame, uncertainty, power, all dialed up to 11 because, well, they're monsters.
It really leans into that outsider perspective.
Absolutely. It uses monsterhood as this incredibly potent and flexible metaphor, especially, as the text says, for exploring queer experiences, alienation, feeling different. It's about that constant tension. Do these characters try desperately to hide who they are, to pass as normal? Or do they finally let the monster out, bare their fangs, and what happens then?
That tension between vulnerability and power.
Exactly. It's about exploring that messy, compelling space.
It sounds like it creates stories that are really personal, probably pretty intense, and likely stick with you long after you play.
I think so. It's this unique mix. Teenage melodrama, real horror elements, supernatural powers, but all grounded in these deep themes. And it's built on collaborating, talking about boundaries, and navigating difficult stuff responsibly together.
A fascinating deep dive into the monstrous heart of adolescence. Thanks for walking us through the source material on this one.
My pleasure. It's definitely a game that gives you a lot to chew on.
So what does all this mean for you, listening? Monsterhearts 2 offers this framework, this lens to explore that often terrifying, confusing, but also maybe incredibly powerful time of growing up, all through the allegory of monsters.
Yeah, it really asks you to embrace the melodrama, get messy, and find both the humanity and the monstrosity in these characters, and maybe, in ourselves a little bit too.
It shows how intimacy can heal, but also how a social pressure, those conditions, can hurt just as much, maybe more, than actual physical harm.
And it gives you tools to actually confront some really tough parts of human experience, but hopefully do it safely and with real care for everyone involved.
All while encouraging you to just play, see what happens next, find out where these messy, monstrous teenagers end up.
Which leads to maybe the really interesting question to ponder.
What does it truly mean when the deepest, most vulnerable parts of ourselves feel monstrous? And who do we become? What power might we find when we finally stop trying to hide them? Something to think about.